Greetings, my dear students, and welcome back to ELS 134, or Instructional Materials Development and Evaluation. In this topic, we're going to talk about the framework of materials and methods. Before we continue, again, please take out your module to be guided throughout this lecture and prepare a notebook and pen to be able to jot down notes throughout our discussion. Before we start though, I would like to address muna the questions that you guys left for me from the previous lecture on the terms and concepts in materials development. So if you can remember, I asked you guys to accomplish a Google form survey, and I got so far I got 2 questions from that. The rest kasi ay hindi naman nagsabi na naintindihan naman nila. But we have 2 students here that have questions. So we first start with a question from Jeffrey Rodas. So Geoffrey is asking, during this pandemic, we are doing activities or taking up lessons by posting to the Google Classroom or meeting up virtually. In this scenario, is learning a language considered to be explicit learning because teachers give us materials to learn it and it happens through formal education, or implicit, which it happens outside the school and using any social media platforms for learning a language? Okay. So before we answer that question, let's first explain the terms or review the terms that were used dito sa question na ito. These are from the previous session. So again, explicit learning refers to learning na guided ng mga guro at under an academic institution. Pag sinabi nating implicit, this is usually learning na initiative ng estudyante. So, ang question dito ni Jeffrey is, dahil dito sa bagong estilo ng pag-aaral na gumagamit tayo ng mga platforms at hindi siya nagaganap sa loob ng isang classroom, ano daw ang nangyayari ngayon? Is it explicit or implicit? So I would say, Jeffrey, that this, what we're doing right now, our learning process right now, is still explicit. Kasi the learning still is under an academic institution, hindi nga lang literal na nasa classroom, pero under pa rin siya ng instruction ng school. And yung mga ginagawa nyo ngayon na activities at yung mga pinapakinggan nyo na lectures ay still a way of the teachers to guide you to meet yung learning objectives. So, again, kasi pag sinabi natin implicit, ito ay sa initiative ng isang learner. So, walang nag-uutos sa kanya na basahin niya ito, walang nag-uutos sa kanya na sagutan niya ito. So, sa kanyang own initiative. But what's happening right now ay yung mga activities, readings, ito ay bigay ng mga teachers. So, I would say this is still explicit learning. Thank you so much for that question. The next one is from Noriel. So, Ma'am Noriel Mendeja. The next question is from Noriel Mendeja. Noriel is asking, Ma'am, ang direct learning po ay kasamahan din ni explicit learning po, ano? Tapos po ang indirect teaching po ay kasamahan din po ni implicit learning. Tama po ba, Ma'am? So, again, i-review natin yung terms na ginamit dito. So, pag sinabi natin direct learning, ito yung sa teacher mismo nang gagaling yung information. Siya ang transmitter ng information. She is the sender. You students are the receiver. Pag sinabi naman nating indirect, the teacher is just guiding or facilitating the learning process. Again, she is just a guide on the side while the students figure the lesson out for themselves. So, tama ka when you said na direct learning is related to explicit learning. So, kasi dahil nagtuturo ang teacher, yun ay guided. Kung ano yung pagkatuto ng mga estudyante ay guided ng instruction niya. Pero I wouldn't say na indirect teaching is implicit learning. Kasi yung indirect teaching, hindi man si teacher mismo yung nagbibigay ng lesson, nandun pa rin siya, nag-guide pa rin siya. Ang ibig sabihin, di ba, ng implicit learning, natututo ang learner outside the classroom sa kanyang sariling initiative. So, sa implicit learning kasi, walang involvement ng kung sino mang teacher or kung ano mang school. So, hindi siya related sa indirect teaching. Kasi ang indirect teaching, hindi ba nagsasalita si teacher, nandun pa din siya. May teacher pa din. So, you are correct when you say na direct learning is related to explicit learning. But, indirect teaching, hindi na siya ganun pwedeng ma-relate sa implicit learning. So, I hope I was able to answer that question. So, if you have more questions for me, please do leave them doon sa Google Form survey pa din. I'll answer them sa mga susunod na lecture just as I did dito sa questions ng dalawa niyong classmates. So, we now move on to the actual discussion of the topic, again, which is going to be framework of materials and methods. So, sa program natin, sa Bachelor of Arts in English Language Studies program, meron tayong quotation na lagi natin ginagamit. So, I've been hearing this quote since I was in college kasi ginagamit ng English Society. So, it goes, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." This is a quote by Ludwig Wittgenstein. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But I asked you guys through a Google Form survey if you actually agree to this statement. So I asked you guys through a Google Form survey if you agree with this statement na the limitations of your language or your knowledge of a language indicate your opportunities and possibilities. So I literally got a 50-50 result. So 50% of the class who answered the survey says yes, and the other 50 disagrees. So marami sa inyo nagsabi na pag well-versed ka sa isang language, you have more opportunities, and marami naman ang nagsasabi na there is no correlation there. But no matter what our opinion is, we do have to acknowledge the fact that language plays a big role in globalization. So as you all probably know, the world is rapidly globalizing. Nations are beginning to come together in international communities, and we are becoming more connected to cultures outside our own. So what role does language play in this regard? As what I've mentioned sa inyo sa module, there is a two-way relationship between globalization and language. Language helps further globalization because it allows communication between different cultures, parang tulay. Therefore, this makes relationships between different countries possible. At the same time, globalization helps promote further use of an international language to be able to sustain these international relationships between different countries. It is important to note, however, that when it comes to learning the English language, people have different motivations. Is it to be able to work abroad? Is it to establish international networks? Is it to be able to understand the lessons in subjects sa school na tinuturo in English? Why is it important to assess the students' motivations before you start teaching? Bakit hindi pwedeng magdiretso na lang? It is important to understand students' reason for wanting to study English because it will help you, as a teacher, to establish the teaching goals, to select the right topics, and to conduct learning activities that are in line with what the students actually want to learn. For example, iba syempre yung mga topics na kailangan ng isang tao na gustong matuto ng English kasi gusto niya magtrabaho abroad in comparison to someone who wants to learn English for academic purposes. In the module that I have provided to you, I have shown you the framework of English language teaching. So this is that framework. So class, teaching, I guess I mentioned this as well sa previous lecture. Teaching doesn't just mean standing and talking in front of a classroom full of students and walking out an hour and a half later. There's so many factors that a teacher should consider before selecting the topics, thinking of the teaching strategy, and creating the materials. Hindi pwedeng larga lang agad. So as you can see from the model, we first consider the context. So we first need to assess the situation of the learners and the educational setting. When we have fully understood the situation and motivations of our students and fully assessed the learning environment, then we can start thinking of the goals. Then we can start crafting the syllabus. And then pagtapos na yung syllabus, we can now start thinking of what materials will be effective in learning, or in teaching rather, the topics. So let's begin with the first factor, the context. The context involves the learners and the educational setting. Why is it important to consider the context first? Gaya ng sabi ko kanina, understanding the learners will help us align the topics and the methods sa kakayanan at kagustuhan ng mga estudyante natin. Also, understanding the situation will help us establish kung yung method or activity na gusto ba nating ipagawa ay posible o hindi. So for example, sa situation ng pandemic na ito, karamihan ng mga estudyante ay unstable ang internet connection, walang devices, hirap sa pag-load, and some are, really not used to the new way of learning. Naninibago lahat. So, if a teacher were to implement a fully virtual or fully online mode of discussion, it would not be effective because the teacher is not considering the current educational environment. This is why it's important to first consider the context. A good teacher should not just be assuming what would be good for the students and what is possible. A teacher should actually exert the effort in assessing the context. So when it comes to the learner, here are some of the factors that you consider. These are in the module that I provided you, but let me cite a few examples. We must consider the learner's age because that will help us determine what topics are appropriate for them, anong mga methods ang effective para sa kanila, anong mga examples ang makaka-relate sila, or what materials will work for them or not. Maganda rin i-consider ang kanilang mga interests para alam natin what will intrigue them and anong mga examples sa discussion ang makaka-relate sila. Another big factor is their learning styles. Ang bawat estudyante kasi class may iba't ibang learning styles. Meron tayong visual learners, kinesthetic learners, audio learners, marami pa. May mga mas nakakaintindi kapag may visuals na ginagamit. May mas nakakaintindi kapag may actions na gagawin. May mas nakakaintindi kahit naririnig lang. So, understanding your students' learning styles will help you determine what kind of materials ang ipe-prepare. So, sa mga visual learners natin, we can create charts and PowerPoint presentations, mga ganong materials. For kinesthetic learners, ang mga pwede natin gawin ay models. For methods, pwedeng those that would involve them moving or interacting. For audio learners, pwedeng mga materials na gawin natin ay mga audio tapes or podcasts, whatever works for them. Also, educational level should be considered din. Like, ano ba mga topic yung mga pwede nating laktawan given na mga ganitong level na yung mga estudyante natin? For example, kapag college na kayo, may mga topic na tayo na hindi na masyadong tututukan kasi assumed na yun, na pag-aralan nyo na yun nung high school at elementary pa lang kayo. So, the second factor under context ay learning environment. Ngayon, the learning environment is worth considering kasi for instance, the resources available for use sa school will determine kung anong mga activities ang pwede at hindi pwedeng magawa. Siyempre, kung gusto mong magpa-presentation, kaso may nauna sa projector, edi wala din. The same goes for class size. So, there are definitely differences sa mga materials na pwede sa maliit na klase lang, sa konting estudyante lang, na hindi na pwede sa mga malalaking classes na, pag marami na masyadong estudyante sa isang klase. Ako personally, one of the biggest factors din na should be considered is the time allotted for each subject. So, sa college, sa atin, sa MSc, dati, bago tayo nagkaroon ng pandemic, no face-to-face sessions pa, kami mga teachers, we only have 1.5 hours in a day sa isang subject with our students. So, we have to think, ano yung mga pwedeng ituro in that small amount of time, at saka anong mga activities ang pwedeng ipagawa sa students na pasok dun sa time allotment na yon. Dati din, we had 18 weeks with our students sa buong semester. So, syempre, iisipin namin na yung 18 weeks na yun, na nagkikita tayo twice a week, hindi naman laging makakapag-meet kasi meron tayong mga holidays, may mga school activities, o minsan may mga unforeseen weather conditions. Minsan, kung si teacher ay hihigitin para umattend ng meeting, hindi rin siya makaka-attend sa klase. So, ano yung mga topics na pwedeng pagkasyahin sa limited na time lamang na iyon? So, that's context, guys. You consider the students and the situation. I hope you're able to follow our discussion so far. Actually, maraming factors yan under learners and learning environment. Pero I believe na dun sa module na in-upload ko, self-explanatory naman na sila. Pag naintindihan na natin ang context, we can start planning the goals. Ano yung mga target natin na matutunan ng mga estudyante natin? Mula sa pag-assess ng mga kakayanan nila, anong mga topics ang dapat nilang matutunan at anong mga skills ang dapat nilang ma-develop. Pagklaro na sa atin bilang mga guro kung ano yung mga dapat matutunan ng mga estudyante natin, pwede na tayong mag-move sa paggawa ng syllabus. So ano bang syllabus, class? You've seen what the syllabus looks like. We as teachers, as your teachers, have given you kung hindi course outline, the syllabus itself. So most definitely, nakakita na kayo nito. But what is it really? So a syllabus, class, is an outline of the subjects or topics sa isang course. So ginagamit to organize kung ano yung mga dapat ituro, bakit siya dapat ituro, anong mga activities ang gagawin under that topic, at anong mga resources at materials, pati na rin references ang kailangan dito. So for this part of the lesson, class, para mas madali nyo maintindihan at para mas relatable din, what I'm going to show you are examples of syllabi na we teachers in MSc use in preparing for your subjects. So, dalawang papakita ko sa inyo example. Yung syllabus na ginagamit namin before nagkaroon ng pandemic at yung bagong syllabus na ginagamit namin ngayong panahon ng COVID-19. So, sample A right here is going to be my syllabus for purposive communication, a subject that I taught before the pandemic. So I'm not going to go into complete detail, but right over here, the one in highlight, are the program outcomes. So basically, this refers to what skills should be developed or what concepts should be understood by the students at the time that they graduate. So for this specific situation, we're talking about graduates of the AB English program because they're the ones taking up the subject purposive communication at the time. This is actually your section. And in this part over here, these are the course outcomes. So this now refers to what specific skills and lessons the students are expected to learn or develop by the time the course ends. So as you can see here under PO code links, the column PO code links, this is where we make, we establish a connection between the specific course outcomes and the program outcomes para kung ano yung mga tinuturo sa course na ito, sa specific subject na ito, are actually related sa kung ano yung mga dapat matutunan ng AB English students in general. And in this part right here, we are now going to explore the actual content of the syllabus. So we have here first the course content. So as you can see with the cell highlighted below, these refer to the actual topics na pag-aaralan. And then we have the second one, specific learning outcomes. So ano yung under that topic, ano yung mga ine-expect na matutunan or magawa ng mga estudyante upon understanding or learning the lesson. The next one are the course outcomes. So sa column na ito, ginagawa natin ng connection naman kung ano yung natatamaan niya na course outcomes from the previous page. So anong major goal or major objective ng subject ang pasok itong topic na pinag-aaralan. Next one is we have week. So this is basically talking about the time allotment. After that, we have teaching and learning activities. So this now refers to the methods na gagamitin ng teachers to reinforce the discussion of the topic. And then outcome-based assessment now refers to what the teacher is going to use to assess how well the students have learned the lesson or if they were able to develop the skills na ina-expect sa kanila by the end of the topic. This next one is now the learning resources. So, ano yung mga references na ginagamit ng teachers in teaching that specific topic? And then, the last one is materials to be used. So, ano yung mga resources ang kailangan i-prepare at anong mga teaching materials ang kailangan for this topic? So, in this case, you can see, we needed audio or video clips of various media. So, obviously, we had to prepare yung specific materials na yun. We also have your text from newspapers, magazines, journals. So again, different materials. So sample B is now my syllabus naman for world literature, a subject that I am currently teaching in this time of the pandemic. So Marinduque State College was actually, teachers from MSc were actually required to undergo training. We had to recalibrate our syllabus. And we had to make certain adjustments because learning situations in this time of COVID-19 is quite different. So this is the content of the syllabus now. So not much has changed pagdating sa program outcomes. Ito kasi is now for social work naman, kaya medyo mas madami siya kumpara dun sa kanina. But one major difference you can see here is the yung course outcomes na. So kanina we had around 12 goals na dapat ma-meet by the end of the subject. As you can see here, we only have 4. So again, we are assessing the learning environment. Una, we have less time to focus on our subjects. We don't have face-to-face sessions anymore. And we only have around 4 months to finish our subject. So, medyo maging realistic tayo and we have to lessen the targets for this course, considering the situation, of course. And now we move to the actual content of the syllabus. So, I'm sure that you can see some differences compared sa content ng sample A. So, we now move on to the content of sample B syllabus. So, una, again, the course outcomes. To be followed by the essential content. Essential content is yung mga, again, the specific subjects na kailangan matutunan ng mga estudyante. We also have time allotment, ilang oras ang kailangan sa pagtuturo ng specific topic na yun. Now, in this part is where we see the major differences. So, we have the teaching and learning activities. Dalawa yan actually. Yung una is flexible, distance, and remote. Under that, we have synchronous and asynchronous learning. So, pag sinabi natin synchronous, this requires the students and the teacher to all be, as much as possible, all be online at the same time and interacting in real time. Pagdating naman sa asynchronous, pwede siyang i-access ng students or gawin ng students at their own time and pace. Okay? So, dito sa subject ko, sa world literature, under ng synchronous could be yung paggamit ng iba't ibang platform. And in my case, I used Facebook Live and I also used Google Classroom. And under asynchronous, ito yung mga hindi required mag-online lahat ng sabay-sabay. So, meron dito ako mga in-upload na materials such as video clips and handouts. So, ito naman sunod is residential or face-to-face. So, ito yung time na we thought we could still have our students come in for face-to-face sessions. Unfortunately, that's no longer possible given our current situation. So, nakikita nyo dyan ay NA. So, we, of course, still need to find ways to assess if our students were able to understand the lesson or not. So, meron pa rin tayo ditong outcomes-based assessment. So, as you can see here, I actually administer my quizzes through Google Forms and using the platform Google Classroom. And then, we finally have the educational resources. So, kanina, that's column materials used. So, indicate din dito kung ano mga materyales ang kailangan naming gamitin para maturo yung specific subject na yun. So there you have it for topic 2, or framework of materials and methods. I hope you were able to understand well what we've talked about in this lecture. So if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask me, I'm going to upload a separate Google Form survey for that. So I'll be able to read your questions and then answer them in the next lecture. So please wait for updates on the upload of the materials for the upcoming topics. With that, thank you very much for listening. Keep safe, and I'll see you again next time.